Every Monday morning for 53 years, I unlocked the same door at the same time. 6:15 a.m. Benedetto's Fine Shoes, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I'd flip on the lights, put the coffee on, and start setting up for the day, and I loved it. Most days, I genuinely loved it. The smell of leather, the rhythm of the work, the customers who became friends over decades. But I watched other people, friends, customers, neighbors show up to jobs they hated, jobs that were eating them alive, jobs they stayed in year after year, always saying the same thing: next year, I'll retire next year. And then next year came, and they said it again and again, until one day they couldn't say it anymore, because they were dead. My name is Salvatore Benedetto, and I want to talk to you about retirement. Not the financial planning part, not the spreadsheets and the calculations, the human part, the part that nobody talks about because it's uncomfortable, the question of when to stop. Here's what I've learned from watching people wrestle with this decision for decades. Most people retire too late. They wait until their bodies give out, until they're too tired to enjoy what they've saved, until the bucket list becomes a list of things they can no longer do. And some people retire too early without a plan, without a purpose, without understanding what they're walking into. But some people get it exactly right. They leave at the perfect moment. They have the money, the health, the clarity, and the courage to step away while they can still actually live. So how do you know which category you're in? I've got 5 questions for you. If you can answer yes to all 5 honestly, not wishfully, then stop reading retirement blogs and start writing your resignation letter. Question 1. Have you been putting your life on hold? I had a customer named Arthur Brennan, postal worker, came into my shop every few months to get his work shoes resoled, same black Oxfords, worn down from walking his route. Arthur talked about retirement the way a prisoner talks about freedom. When I retire, he'd say, I'm going to take my wife to Ireland. Her grandmother was from Cork. She's always wanted to see it. He said this for 15 years of when I retire. Then one day, it was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays were slow. Arthur's wife came into the shop alone. She wasn't there for shoes. She was there to tell me Arthur had died. A heart attack 3 months before his planned retirement date. They never went to Ireland. She buried him with a photo of Cork in his pocket, a place he never saw because he was always going to go next year. So here's my question. What are you waiting for? Not in a vague, inspirational poster way. I mean specifically, what trip have you been postponing? What hobby have you been putting off? What person have you been meaning to visit? And more importantly, why? I understand that life has obligations, bills to pay, responsibilities to meet. You can't just abandon everything and go chase butterflies. I'm not naive, but there's a difference between I can't do this right now because of genuine constraints and I keep telling myself I'll do it someday while someday never comes. If you've been deferring your life, if you've got a list of things you're saving for retirement that keeps getting longer while you keep getting older, that's a sign, a serious one. My wife Gloria used to say, someday isn't on the calendar, as she was right. Check your calendar right now. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No someday anywhere. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one thing you've been putting off and put it on the calendar. Not someday, a real date. If you can't even commit to one thing, then what makes you think retirement will be any different? You'll just keep deferring forever. Question 2. Is your work hurting your body? I knew a man named Vincent Caruso, worked at the Navy Yard for 32 years. A welder, good money, good benefits, brutal on the body. Vincent had a bad back by 40, bad knees by 50. By the time he was 60, he walked like a man 20 years older. He'd come into my shop and lower himself into the chair like he was afraid something might break. I asked him once, Vinny, why don't you stop? You've got enough years in. You've got the pension. He shook his head. Can't afford it. Kids still need help. House isn't paid off. Maybe in a couple more years. A couple more years turned into 5, then 7, then 10. By the time Vincent finally retired at 67, his back was so bad he could barely walk to the mailbox. The fishing trips he'd dreamed about, he couldn't sit in a boat for more than an hour. The golf, he wanted to play 3 holes and he was done. He traded the best years of his health for a few more years of income, and the math didn't work out. It never does. So here's my question. What is your job doing to your body? Not just the obvious stuff, the bad back, the sore knees. I'm talking about the slow damage, the sleep you're not getting, the stress that's eating at you, the blood pressure that keeps creeping up, the weight you've gained because you're too exhausted to exercise and too stressed to eat right. I ran my own shop for over 50 years. I know what work does to you. My hands are gnarled now, arthritis from decades of stitching and cutting. My eyes aren't what they were from years of close work and bad lighting. Every job takes something from your body. That's the trade. But there's a difference between normal wear and a job that's actively destroying you. If your work is making you sick, really sick, not just tired, then every year you stay is a year you're stealing from yourself. And here's the cruel math nobody wants to talk about. The money you're saving by working those extra years, you might end up spending on medical bills, or worse, you might not live long enough to spend it at all. I'm not telling you to quit tomorrow. I'm telling you to be honest about what's happening to your body. And if the answer is my job is killing me slowly, then that needs to factor into your decision. Question 3. Are you missing the people who matter? This one hits close to home for me. When my children were young, I worked 70-hour weeks, sometimes more. I told myself I was doing it for them, providing, building something, making sure they'd have opportunities I never had, and that was true partially, but it was also an excuse. Because the truth is, after Anna Maria died, work was easier than being present. Cutting leather was easier than feeling. The shop was a place where I could control things. Home was a place where I was reminded every day of what I'd lost. So I worked and worked and worked. My sister Rosa raised my children more than I did. She was the one who heard about their days at school. She was the one who helped with homework. She was the one who was there. I was there for the big moments, the plays, the graduations, the milestones. But I missed thousands of small moments, the ordinary Tuesdays, the nothing special Saturdays, the conversations that happen when you're just present, not rushing in for an event and rushing out again. I can't get those back. My children are in their 70s now. We have a good relationship, but there's a gap there, a distance that formed during the years when I was physically present but emotionally checked out. So here's my question. Who are you missing? And I don't just mean your kids. I mean your spouse, your parents, your friends, your grandchildren. Who's getting the tired version of you? The distracted version? The I'm here, but I'm thinking about work version? I had a customer, Eleanor Vance, lovely woman, worked in insurance, who came in one day absolutely destroyed. I asked what was wrong. She said her mother had died that morning, and then she said something I've never forgotten. I was going to visit her next month. I kept saying next month, and now there is no next month. Eleanor's mother had been asking her to visit for 2 years, and Eleanor kept saying she was too busy. Work was too demanding. She'd come soon, soon, soon never came. So think about the people you love. Are you giving them enough of yourself, or are you giving them whatever's left over after work takes its share? If the people you love are getting your scraps, that's a sign, a big one. Because here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Your job will replace you in 2 weeks. The people who love you never will. Question 4. Do you know what you're going to do? This is where people get themselves into trouble. I've watched dozens of people retire with big celebrations, gold watches, tearful goodbyes, and then fall apart within a year because they'd spent so long defining themselves by their work that they didn't know who they were without it. My friend Harold Washington, no relation to Gloria, despite the name, retired from the Transit Authority in 1989. Big party, cake, balloons, the whole thing. 40 years of service. I saw him 6 months later. He looked terrible, lost weight, not in a good way, eyes dull, shuffling when he walked. "Harold," I said, "what's going on?" He shrugged. "I don't know what to do with myself as I wake up and there's nothing, no schedule, no purpose, nothing." Harold's wife told me later that he'd started drinking in the afternoon just to pass the time, just to fill the hours. He died 3 years into retirement. Officially, it was liver failure. Unofficially, he died because he didn't have a reason to live. So here's my question. Do you know what you're going to do with your time? Not a vague idea, not "I'll figure it out when I get there." A real plan, a real sense of how you're going to spend your days, because retirement isn't a vacation. Vacations end. Retirement is the rest of your life, and the rest of your life needs structure, not the rigid structure of a job, but some kind of rhythm, some kind of purpose. When I finally stepped back from the shop full-time, I was in my mid-80s. By then I knew exactly what I was going to do. Spend time with Gloria, travel while we still could, keep making shoes, just slower, just for fun, read the books I'd been putting off, call my daughter every Sunday and actually talk, not just checkin'. I had a plan. Harold didn't. So before you retire, do this. Write down how you're going to spend a typical Tuesday, not a special day, not a vacation day, a regular, nothing happening, ordinary Tuesday. If you can fill that day with things that give you purpose and joy, things that get you out of bed in the morning, then you're ready. If you stare at that blank page and think "I have no idea," then you're not ready, and you need to figure that out before you leave, not after. Question 5. Can you actually afford it? I've saved this one for last because frankly it's the most practical, and practicality matters. I knew a couple, Frank and Dolores Magnus. Frank was a manager at a department store. Dolores was a secretary at a law firm. They'd saved steadily their whole lives. Good people, responsible people, but they did the math wrong. They figured they'd need 20 years of savings. They both came from families where people died young, parents gone by 70, grandparents gone even earlier. So they planned for 20 years, maybe 22, just to be safe. Frank lived to 94. Dolores is still alive now. She's 97. They ran out of money in 2008. Had to sell the house they'd lived in for 40 years. Moved into a small apartment, dependent on Social Security and help from their children. They didn't plan wrong because they were stupid. They planned wrong because they assumed they knew something they couldn't know, how long they'd live. So here's my question. Have you actually run the numbers? Not a guess, not a hope, real numbers. How much do you have saved? How much do you need to live on each year? How long might that need to last? And here's the part people forget. What about health care? What about inflation? What about the things that will go wrong? Because things always go wrong. I'm not a financial planner. I fix shoes. But I've watched enough people get this wrong to know you cannot guess your way through retirement math. You need to know. If you haven't sat down with a spreadsheet, a professional, or at least a calculator, then stop thinking about retirement and start thinking about planning. And if you have run the numbers and they work, then you're ready. The choice is clear, so there they are. 5 questions. Have you been putting your life on hold? Is your work hurting your body? Are you missing the people who matter? Do you know what you're going to do? Can you actually afford it? If you answered yes to all five honestly, not wishfully, then what are you waiting for? I'm 106 years old. I've watched people work until they dropped and regret it. I've watched people retire too early and regret that too. But the ones who got it right, they didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They looked at their life, asked themselves hard questions, and made a decision. Let me tell you one more story before I go. There was a woman named Patricia Holloway, came into my shop for years. She was a librarian at the public library on 86th Street. Sensible shoes, sensible coat, sensible everything. Patricia retired in 1995 at 62. Her colleagues thought she was crazy. She could have worked another 5 years, gotten a bigger pension, but she said no, she was done. I asked her once why she left when she did. She said, "My husband has Parkinson's. The doctors say he's got maybe 10 good years left. I can have those years with him, or I can have a bigger pension. I choose him." Patricia and her husband traveled for 8 years, saw places they'd dreamed about their whole lives, were together. Really together, not just passing each other at the end of exhausting days. He died in 2003. She told me afterward that she didn't regret a single dollar of pension she'd given up. Not one. "I have the memories," she said. "You can't buy those." That's what this is about. Not spreadsheets. Not optimal claiming strategies. Not squeezing every last penny out of a system. It's about knowing when to stop, knowing what matters, having the courage to choose the life you want instead of the life you're stuck in. If you can answer yes to those 5 questions, the choice is clear. Stop waiting. Stop deferring. Stop telling yourself you'll do it next year. Put in your notice. Go live your life while you still can.